Hello, welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And I am Jessica Tercero.
Welcome. So this week, we watched The Mummy. We watched 3 of them.
Oh boy.
The first one was the Boris Karloff 1932 version. Then we watched the 1999 Brendan Fraser Mummy. And then the horribly wonderful 2017 Tom Cruise Mummy that everybody saw.
But was it wonderful?
Well, we'll get into it.
So, The Mummy was originally a film from 1932.
Yes, starring Boris Karloff, who was sort of like one of the kings next to Bela Lugosi and the like of the early...
He was Frankenstein too, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and they won like a whole bunch of like awards and stuff for the makeup because it was so
incredible.
Wild.
And even in this one, in The Mummy, I noticed like the first scene that he shows up, the makeup was fantastic.
Oh, it was. And when he was walking around, apparently people were fainting because like
so scary.
Because like also like now we're used to this shit, right? And we're just like, oh cool, look at that. Like, you know, we go to places like Universal Studios during Halloween time to be scared. Yeah. But like this was so new back then that it's like people were legit thought that the mummy had come to life, and it was crazy.
I love that.
The 1932 version is really interesting because it like all of these films centers around white people coming into
foreign places
and looting and stealing things and taking it as their own.
And then also getting mad when people who reside there, civilians of the place, get mad. And in this case, a mummy is like, no, you can't take that from me. They're like, no, hide the map. Steal the, like, it's wild that they're getting bummed that like they're dying, which also like I don't want to die, but still don't steal people's shit.
But also they're killing the people that like are fucking natives living there and trying to be like, hey, don't take our shit.
Yeah.
So that's real fucked up.
Yeah.
So anyways, so the 1932 Mummy is really interesting because unlike the other two, the mummy gets free like right off the bat, and then we don't hear from him for 10 years.
No, and then he shows
he's like super chill, just kind of like learns the language, learns how to live. He's got this fucking sweet ass apartment. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And he's just like waiting for the moment to where he can find his love, Anaximamun's tomb, and it's
come
just
back.
like so he's playing this slow game because he's immortal and he don't give a fuck.
He doesn't. Yeah. And it's also weird too because I feel like the way that the mummies and the other two that we'll get to come back is they like suck the soul out of people and like steal their life. So in my head in the original, I feel like the time that we don't see him, he's just like out killing random people to like gain his sentience. Well, not even sentience, totally. But just like his organic flesh back to be like a person who doesn't look like a mummy.
But he kind of does because like he's got like the wrinkly like old leather skin.
He shows up at the museum and he's just like playing the part fully, and you're just like, everyone's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm nobody. And you're just like, oh no, you're the mummy. Like, we're not dumb. We know what's up. But everyone else is still just like a little like, I don't know. And then I did like how they kind of immediately jumped. So the movie's only like an hour. Yeah. It's like an hour and 5 minutes or something. And I do like that they immediately jump into this like love story that we've seen recreated in the following two.
But is it a love story though?
No, it's okay, big air quotes, love story. It's a story about manipulation, and it's a story essentially about abuse of power. So he has this power to like trick her or like make her come to him in any capacity because he wants to use her as a vessel for his old love, Anaxunamun, right? And he's Imhotep, she's Anaxunamun, their whole love thing.
Well, no, but she's also the reincarnated version of her.
Yeah, so that was what I wasn't super clear on. Okay, it's like finding the difference between them because she is a direct lineage of that family line, which is why.
Well, no, but not also like also. So when I was like reading stuff about this, is there was a lot of stuff. There was a reincarnation scene that we didn't get that was filmed but was never included in this. Ooh. And so this whole thing has to do with reincarnation, and like that's carried through in the later Mummy films as well. But it's not explicit in this, so we're like you have to infer a lot, and I feel like the storytelling of the time didn't really allow for that, or like like you didn't want to be too taboo to where like people wouldn't go see your film and stuff like that, right? True. So I'm not sure why it was cut. I don't know, but I feel like that could have added a lot to that scene.
Yeah, because even just with that, I'm like, oh well, that makes more sense narratively, right?
But it's funny that you jumped, like, so your thought process went straight to, like, the love between Imhotep and Anaximamune, where I thought you were gonna go was like, oh, the love story between the white dude that fucks everything up and the woman who's the victim in all of this. Because that's where I was like, and I was like, is it a love story? Because, like, he straight up is like, she's on the couch, like, oh, like, she fucking faints at the, like,
and he picks her up at the door.
So Imhotep, like, kind of, like, starts this ritual where he starts doing this thing, and she ends up going to where he is because she is drawn to this, like, almost in a hypnotic state. So she's at the museum where he's performing this ritual, and she just kind of is, like, trying to bang on the door to get in, and the dude that creepily followed her comes up and is like, what are you doing? And then she, like, falls down.
And then he picks her up and takes her elsewhere.
And then he picks her up and takes her to her house. She's never met this dude.
Yep.
Or his dad.
Yep.
And, like, all of a sudden, like, she wakes up and she's so fucking calm. Like, bitch, I would be so...
I would freak out. Who the fuck are you?
I'd be so scared.
Yeah.
Like, so she wakes up and she's just like, oh, what's up? And he's like, I love you. And she's like, look, I know where this leads. Like, you know, I don't want to bang.
Yeah.
Like, because she's so casual about, like, fucking banging.
Yeah.
Right?
I know. Which I love, but it's also like, these guys need to stop. They need to chill.
They super need to chill.
And it really is interesting, like, yeah, because it's a pining for her affection from both sides, whereas Imhotep is like, this is an Anaximamune, the guy's like, no, it's not. This is this other person.
Yeah. So the thing that I loved so much about Anaximamune in this is she's lovely, right? And in the sense that, or like, you know, because there's like a duality happening that you don't really get until the very end, where she again is called by the thrall of Imhotep, right? To go all the way back to the museum, right? Where there's this exhibit by the British Museum in fucking Egypt, right?
And a full set change. And a full set and costume change that makes it feel like it's almost a time machine. Like, now we're back, which is wild. And I do want to point out something that was really funny. When he's showing her the sarcophagus, he, like, punches the glass of the case. There's obviously no glass, but the Foley effect on it is just like, whoosh, like this huge breaking. And it was just, like, the cutest little thing. And I was like, aw, that's so sweet. I love it.
But so, like, he brings her to this location, and he brings her to the mummy chamber, like the mummification chamber, right? Where he has, like, his, like, slave, who he took a slave from the white man to then be his own slave, right? Which is
it's messy.
Slavery. It's like such a throwaway thing, right?
It's just so casual. Like, well, we're white, so we're the only important people here. And
but then
like, oh, okay.
he took that person and liberated them so they could be a slave for him.
Yeah,
which is also fucked up.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's like got this like cohort essentially that's like helping him prepare this mummification chamber, because the only way to get Anaximamune as he remembered her, because he doesn't want the new version of her, right? He wants Anaximamune not reincarnate, but in her original form.
Yeah, from millennia past. Like, correct. He wants that version of her.
So he's trying to take her soul and put it into this mummified body of Anaximamune. Yeah. And so she is there, and it's like interesting because it's almost like she's having a conversation with herself in the same way. This is going to be super nerdy. I don't know if you ever seen Deep Space Nine from Star Trek.
No.
But there's this character that has like it's a humanoid that has like a parasite living in them, and they share a consciousness. Ooh. And they kind of like make decisions together and stuff. Ooh. So it almost felt like that, to where she was like, I don't want this person to die. You know, like this is who I am now, because like if Imhotep took her soul out of there, then like the person that is this woman would then be sacrificed. And so they make a collective decision together as women, like in womanhood type of, like, you know, like they're standing together because they're not going to let this man destroy what they are now. Yeah. Right. And so like he's just like, no, I want you the way you were. And she's like, but I'm fine now. And I'm this new person. And I'm like, you know, I love who I am now. Because she sees like they have this bond, not just, it doesn't feel like it's just because they're sharing the same body. But, you know, Anaximamune is a little bit progressive in the way that she's just kind of like, this is who I am now. Like, you need to accept me for who I am. Yeah. And then he's just like, no, rah!
Yeah, and he gets all mad.
I hate everything. I hate change, right? And she's
just general men. It sounds like men in general.
Right.
That sounds like a pretty
And she goes over and like, you know, he's like literally like about to stab her, and she goes to her goddess, right?
Yeah.
She goes to Isis and is like, please, 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 like, you know, save me. And what I love about this is, again, it's women sheltering women.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, from toxic masculinity, from, you know, like patriarchy, all these other things, right? And so she goes to Isis for help, and Isis is like, boom, fuck you. And then Isis obliterates the mummy. Whereas, like, otherwise he would have been immortal forever, but a god struck him down because...
Well, because it was that, but didn't they burn the scroll also? So he was struck down, and then they burned that scroll that they
did both.
They did both. And so it was
Yes.
like that sort of symbiotic, like, this thing that he held so dear that was sort of like a part of his existence in some capacity that he wanted back so bad, that gets burned. Isis is like, no thanks, and then he's dead. He becomes
Well,
a shell.
and instead of focusing on the thing that could actually destroy him, right, like burning the scroll and stuff like that, he focused on his prize, on the woman, right? He hyper focuses in on his motivation is not necessarily staying alive; it is controlling the woman.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. So, but I thought that was really interesting, and like I thought Zita's character was really. It was really interesting. I keep saying Zita because I can't remember her name. But, like, because...
when we get to the next one, I'm going to be referring to...
This is the 1930s, and she's talking about casual sex. Just, like, sure, whatever, it's cool.
Which is fun.
You know, which is roaring 20s coming out of that. It's the 30s, right?
Yeah.
So still carrying on some of that, like, you know, rebellious spirit, right? Which is cool. And she was, like, as an actor, was fucked over a lot during this. Like, she was put in... Okay,
like, in behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, I didn't read about this. Let's talk.
So, behind the scenes, the director, he worked on Dracula and, like, Metropolis. He was also a cinematographer for I Love Lucy, which I loved. But he was a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
So he, like, from day one was like, oh, this bitch, like, she is trouble. Like, y'all watch out because she's fucking trouble, right? Without, like, anything, right? And he would try to be like... oh, you're gonna have to do like a nude scene, and like thinking she was gonna be like, oh my god, no, and she's like sure, let's get it past the critics, and he's like, oh man,
JK,
but
LOL.
the most fucked up thing he did, I think, was he put her in an arena with live lions, fucking lions, right, with no protection, while him and the rest of the crew and all the other people were in protective cages. She's just like a badass out there with these lions.
Jesus.
And so that's fucked up. And the more fucked up thing is that scene didn't even make it to the movie. So this motherfucker was just like, cool, maybe a lion will eat your face.
Well, also I feel like that's indicative of like her career as a star, because she was only in movies up until the mid-30s. She did movies.
You want to know why?
No. Or I do want to know why. Why was it? Because I don't know. I actually don't.
I don't want to know. Well, so she also like she was obviously like a co-star of this film, right? The whole thing centers around her, and she, like, you know, it ends with her being the person to deliver justice to this person who's been abusing her for centuries, which is great, right? But so she was demoted from co-star to supporting actress when she refused to have her option picked up by Universal. So Universal was like, oh yeah, you don't want to play ball, sweetie? You're supporting cast, you're not co-star. Even though she's clearly a co-star. Yeah. That's fucking sexism.
She's the lead.
So she was being fucked over by the director and by the studio itself.
Well, I fully believe that, and especially in like at that time in Hollywood where everything was male dominated, all like no women worked in those studios apart from just being the object of affection, the object of romance, the object of sex. Yeah. Like that was, especially for the men and like the director and other people, that's what women were in this capacity. Whereas the male, the lead, essentially, the man was always the lead, right? Mm-hmm. He was the object of like strength and of empathy and of all these things for the audience, because who are the men thinking about? Other men.
But it was so fucking shallow. Like, I was just watching him and I'm like, he's a supporting cat. Like, he's a supporting.
He was so boring.
It was the mummy and her.
Truly.
You know?
He was like.
And she saves herself at the end, which was great.
Yeah. He was the most boring thing, and even his acting was pretty subpar. It was just very, like, reactive, and nothing
like,
felt...
hello, I saved you.
Yeah. Like in that...
hello, I love you.
Yes. And that moment
Marry me.
He goes to the door and is just like, look... They're like, what's happening? Give me a second. Comes right back, and he's like, I don't know. And you're like, oh my god, shut up. Go to bed. Like... It's so tired and boring, and it wasn't great. But even she had some like wonderful lines when she's in bed and like sick. Supposedly, she said something like Fuck, I put it on my Instagram story.
Oh yeah, I saw
just
like something about I have rich friends.
I have rich friends. They have money. They'll give you money. Like,
Ooh, daddy.
I know, these wonderful little moments of like whimsy and just like good acting, but also just fun. And she was captivating and great. And also the makeup of Boris Karloff and sort of the presence of Boris Karloff was also wonderful.
Shot that just kept happening over and over again, which I put on my Instagram story.
Yeah.
Right, was just like him like sitting there with his eyes were like glazed over, and then they just like came into full focus, and just like that shot of his face was so good.
It really was.
And like they were the best part of the whole film, and they tried like the film tried so hard to not make it about them.
Yeah.
But like I'm so glad that like the ending was just about them, because that's what it was.
That was
like
the movie.
Fuck these white dudes that like were just like, we're not supposed to open this. Oh sure, here whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
It was like, mess. So that's how the first one ends. And that was it, essentially.
And we probably went into that a little bit more than we wanted to.
I know, we were like trying to cut it down and just like, let's talk like 3 minutes
we're
on
like,
this.
well, 3 minutes, and now it's been like 20.
Yeah.
But mostly because like I feel like that one we're so acquainted with I think a lot of our listeners are really acquainted with the 1999 version of The Mummy, right? And I like there was such a big difference between like, you know, there it was the occult, it was this, it was like, you know, and I want to emphasize like how cool is it that The Mummy like just got up and walked out, and we didn't hear from them for 10 years, and like the archaeologist was like, I'm not sure if it was shame, if it was him being scared for his own life or whatever, but he did not talk about what happened for those 10 years, right? Whereas the other people are like, holy shit, oh my god, we gotta destroy this person! You know? So I thought, like, I don't know, I think it's really important, and I think that those are some of the things that really made it shine. Yeah. You know? And truly. Some of the things that were really lost in the other reincarnations
of the mummy. Yeah, because in this one it was very much like he's awake, it's happening now, drama, action, and that's what the difference between going into I guess the 1999 version with Brendan Fraser. Segue. Look at this. This is just an action movie. This is Die Hard meets Boris Karloff. Like,
the first one was like a horror film.
Yes,
right?
Where all the shots were really sort of not overexposed, but just like we land on Boris
really
Karloff's
ominous.
face for like 10 seconds.
Really
like,
ominous.
Very ominous. Yeah.
Whereas like the whole shot where like they were like when they were taking the scroll out and things like that, and the way that the camera moves in that first like 10 minutes of the film when they're like actually uncovering all this, it is shot like a horror film for sure.
Yeah,
and this is fun action adventure 1999.
We're in a library. We're in the tomb. We're doing this. We have a gun. Oh my god! So we open on the next one in Hominoptera. Brendan Fraser's there. We see him. He's shooting a bunch of brown people, par for the course of American media in the 90s. Well, I mean, now
before that, there's like, you know, the like, this is emo tip, blah blah blah.
And there was a flashback.
Yeah, there's a flashback first.
Never mind. So we have the flashback.
Well, they all start with the flashback.
They do. Of some kind to sort of set the stage for like, here's the Egyptian lore or history of the characters we're about to discuss, and then we jump straight back into that fight with Brendan Fraser and then his friend Benny, who was like a scumbag. We find that out at the beginning, but he's wacky.
Fun fact, the camels actually really hated him. So that scene where
he's trying to pull the camel?
Where he's trying to pull the camel, the camels fucking hated him, and they're just like, fuck off.
Fuck you. Yeah, we're done. So that whole scene happens, so it shows that Brendan Fraser was at Hominoptera, gives him the credibility that's there, blah, blah, blah. You see the face come up out of the sand, and he's like, in the whole toss-up, so it's like, ooh, spooky, here we go. And then we're introduced to Rachel Weisz, at the library, and this also, I didn't know this took place in 1923 in the same way that the other one did.
Also, interesting note about Rachel Weisz, right? So this didn't make it into the film at all. I mean, it did in kind of like a throwaway line where she was talking about her daddy and like who he is or whatever, right? Her character was originally meant to be Evelyn Carnarvon, who was named after the daughter of George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. He's the dude that funded the expedition that led to the finding of King Tut's tomb in November of 1922. So her and her brother were supposed to be the children of the cursed Lord Carnarvon, as mentioned in the line where she tells O'Connell that her father is a very, very famous explorer. So then later on, when the librarian, like the dude overlord librarian is like, you're only here because of your parents' money, right? You know, which is because her daddy was the one that found King Tut.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. Because
So-
even then, I just assumed that was just some general exposition to explain, like, she's in the library, all the shit goes crazy because she, like, all the bookshelves fall, and then he's
Yeah.
like, you're lucky that your dad's a whatever, and she's like, whatever.
But-
you know, and then
Yeah.
even the next scene when she sees her brother, he's literally digging through some very precious, like, mummy skeletons and
he's
evidence.
like-
He's just, like, pulling it apart. He's like, look at this hand I have.
He's spooning a fucking mummy.
Yes,
like
in
in the fucking sarcophagus.
Yes.
Like, holy shit, dude.
Which is just absolutely insane, but they're just breathing right past it. He's
And
like,
also
look at this
hella
cute thing.
gross. Can
Super
we just talk
gross.
about how gross that is? I would
Yeah.
never spoon a mummy. Thank
Ugh.
you.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it a couple times, but it's very neither here nor there.
So let's go back to talk about, like, kind of, like, a little bit of an overview and maybe, like, some of the differences that, like, because I feel like the premise is the same where, like, you know, white people come in, take brown people's artifacts, and then end up, like, setting off a curse that is about to destroy the world.
Yeah.
Because of, like, some crazy love story that happened thousands of years ago and reincarnation, and then it ends up that, like, white people save the world.
Yeah.
Which is
And
dumb.
that, yeah, they get the
I
title.
mean,
They get
actually, in the first one, I guess, like, you know, the white people don't save the world, right? Because it is, like, she has, Zeta from the 1932 mummy has Egyptian blood in her, right?
Yeah.
So she saves everybody.
Herself.
Right.
And everybody
She
else.
saves herself and everybody
Yeah.
else. So that's not a victory for the white man. But the other two are definitely victories for the white man.
Which is boring.
Yeah, super
Yeah.
boring. It's white man comes in and like, despite the fact that the natives are trying to be like, hey, don't do this, there's a curse, they're like, yeah, whatever, fuck your curse, we don't believe in you. Kind of like belittling them and, like, treating them like they're stupid, which is fucked up.
Literally, the scene when they find the box where the Book of the Dead is preserved.
Yeah.
And they're like the three white guys who get killed later. Spoiler alert, they die. Cute, love it. When they open the box, it's like, oh, that's just a book. We're not going to get rich off of this. And then they kick the box and it opens up to where the small incantations of the organs that would be placed in these bottles for the mummy, right? They take those because they're like, we're going to be rich. But when the box shows up, all the natives who have helped them get there run away because they're like, you're about to get cursed. We're not about to get cursed. Bye. And they're like, they're stupid. And you're like,
Yay, America!
yay.
That's for all Americans.
And that's so wacky. Like, ugh, my God, so gross. But that's, I mean, essentially where it starts, because then they find that book, and then that night, I didn't know that Rachel Weisz is the one who brings him back.
Fuck yeah! So
Yeah.
this is like,
Or I forgot, rather, that she was the one who did that.
I mean, like, technically the men set it up, and she just kind of, like, she was the straw that broke the camel's back.
True.
Or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I felt like that was really shitty because she is so smart. And she is so intelligent,
Yeah.
and she knows all of these stories about everything. She would have known better than to read that out loud.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was just really shitty to have her do that, because, like, that just kind of, because she's just such a smart character.
Yeah.
She knows what she's doing.
Well, it's also sort of opposite of what they were already setting her up to be, because they are setting up to be this very, very knowledgeable person who is, like, the guide above all other men who are there essentially on her back. They're riding her coattails, and even when they're, like, riding to Hamunaptra, Brendan Fraser's, like, impressed that she's riding a camel. It's like, no, she's a badass. Like, the whole time they think she is less than she is, and I feel like even in that moment where the men are like, oh, they're not going to find anything because they have a woman leading her, almost verbatim, like, that's what they say.
They say that.
And then she's like, this is a statue of this, and this is a statue of this, and it's like an obvious cut to and antithesis from the phrasing before, and I really like that because they're really resetting this character. And then she's the one who reads the book and brings it back from the dead, and then one of the guy who said that is like, no, don't read the book. So then they're doing the opposite thing where it's like, he's now smarter than her, and you're like, I don't know why you set this up for her to be this person and then just take it away. Like, it didn't make sense to me. And when I saw it again, I was like, I don't remember that happening because it seems wrong.
I mean, I guess now is the time to get into the injustices that they did to her.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, that's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is that they set her up, like you said, to be this really smart, amazing person, and then they just took that away from her.
Yeah.
In that scene. And then the whole time she's all like, oh, yeah, I want to do this. And she gets locked in rooms, and she gets, like, like, oh, you can't be here. You can't do this. So she keeps getting denied, like, all of these places and all of these things and all these conversations that she should probably be a part of,
Yeah.
right? Or like, you know, like, oh, it's not safe, so I'm gonna lock you in the room. That's fucking Indiana Jones,
Yeah.
right? Like, and she is not the females from Indiana Jones, where
No.
she just kind of like sits there and is just like, oh, like, you know, like, what are you doing? Just get back here, Indy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, she is a person that has agency, and she has she's so smart and she's so sweet, but like the entire time is just told by all of these dudes that she's not smart.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, going back to the librarian, the first introduction of her, she is there and she is, like, putting a book on the shelf, right? And then she tries to lean over a little bit too far, and then just suddenly the entire thing is in chaos because she tried so hard to do this one thing, and then she gets reprimanded for that. And then, so that kind of sets the stage for how we're supposed to think about her. Super
actually,
smart,
that's really,
but really clumsy.
Yeah.
Which is fucked up.
Yeah.
Because she's not, you know?
She's not.
Like, and so...
But isn't that very telling just for that one moment? She tries to do this one thing, and then everything falls to shit and everyone blames her for it. Like, that's generally just her character in this film, or how they've portrayed this character in this film.
And then, like, you know, every time a dude has to come in and save it.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, she gets captured by Emotep, right?
Yes.
And then her so her whole motivation throughout this whole time was to try to find this book.
Yeah.
And then her brother gets to be the one to read from the book. So she is telling him, like, oh, what is this hieroglyph? It has this and this. And she's like, oh, that's this.
Oh,
so,
like at the end.
At the end,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
And so he gets to control the army, and he gets to be the person to live her dream, right?
Yeah.
And she doesn't even get to touch the fucking book.
Yeah.
Right? Because then the motherfucker, as they're running out, drops her fucking book that is like her whole motivation for this. And then she's reduced to a fucking trophy.
Yeah.
You know, like every time she does something, she never actually gets to be the person that does something. It is always her doing it through like a man using her knowledge to accomplish the task.
Yeah. Truly. And that's so frustrating the entire time to see that. And then to know that that scene exists where she's the one to blame, essentially. Visually, she's the one to blame.
Yes.
Right? That's what we're supposed to believe. And that is just... it is so incredibly frustrating that she is the cause of it, or that's what we're supposed to see. And then even when, like, he's about to take her and Brendan Fraser wants to just, like, shoot Imhotep, Imhotep's just like, no, you're coming with me. She's like, if I don't go with him, you're gonna die.
She's sacrificing
She's
herself.
literally sacrificing herself. And she's like, because you don't understand the situation of this, I do. If I don't go with him, there will be consequences. He's like, no, well, I have a gun. And she's like, stop, honey, please.
Yeah, sweet.
Sweetie.
Sweet baby.
Sweetie, chill out.
But, like, also, like, so let's talk about motivation for a minute in this, right? So, Brendan Fraser, his character, O'Connell, right? His motivation throughout the whole thing is ever-changing, but it's always self-serving.
Yes,
right?
truly.
So it's either treasure, it is his life, if he's running away from gunfire or whatever, it becomes Evelyn because at some point he starts to care with her, or about her, even though their fucking introduction was the worst thing, and
he forces a kiss on her at the jail. Like, he just pulls her to the cage and is just like, and you're like, fuck off.
I'm sorry, how the fuck are you supposed to find that charming?
Yeah.
Like, I just found him super repulsive the entire
he was
time.
Gross.
Super repulsive and super, like, patronizing. Whereas, like, back when I was, like, a kid, right? I was like, oh, this is great, because, like, that was literally what, like, the picture of a good dude was.
That was men.
Yes.
That was a hero.
That was masculinity.
That was masculinity, yeah.
Yes.
Truly.
And, like, and we were just, as women, we were there to support that.
Yeah.
And then when this chain of events started, right, that unfortunately she was the catalyst for, right, her motivation switched, and her motivation was never self-serving, right? I mean, maybe, like, a little bit because, like, knowledge, probably trying to, like, you know, keep up with her daddy or prove that she was, like, you know, but, like, I don't feel like it was for other people. I feel like it was for, like, I feel like it was not to prove to other people, but just for, like, humanity.
Yeah, she was curious.
Right.
And also, like, if there was one self-serving thing that she had, as far as her motivation is concerned, it was that she was curious for knowledge, and she was curious for discovery, and she was curious for adventure. She wanted to find
all these things that were not allowed to her.
Yeah, that were taken from her.
That were
again.
denied to her as a woman.
Like you said, she didn't have the agency or capacity to do that in the eyes of this sort of male-dominated
Well, she had the capacity to do it, but she was not allowed to do it.
But not to the men. The men completely underestimated her at every pass.
She would not be allowed to go to university because she didn't have field experience, but she couldn't get field experience because she couldn't get somebody to take her out because she's a liability.
Yep.
But, like, her motivations were always were always for general humanity or for her
Yes.
own curiosity,
Yeah.
right? It was first knowledge, and then her motivations changed to wanting to save the world.
Yes.
Right? Because she understood what was at stake. Whereas Brendan Fraser's motives the entire time were like, I want to save my life.
Yeah.
You know,
And I want to be with this girl.
Yeah.
Which is just like the most boring thing, and it's also the most relevant to, I guess, straight men in general. That's like, I feel like the end game for a lot of men, and like that's their call to adventure. That's their conquest, is like finding a woman, and it's just like,
And they also never take ownership.
so boring. No.
Right?
For
Of
their own
like,
stuff.
we are the people that we should have listened.
Yeah.
Like, they never once say, like,
Nope.
we should have listened, we should have not done this.
Yeah.
Like, it is like, oh, this is fucked up, we're gonna fix it. And then they're allowed to be the heroes at the end, which is real shitty. And Rachel Weisz, is not allowed to be that person.
Nope.
Because she, like, again, the men use her knowledge in order to free her, or in order to, so, like, she's in a sense freeing herself or saving herself, but she has to do it through a man
Yeah.
in order for it to happen.
Yes.
Which is really
Which
fucked
is
up.
wild, isn't it?
And then like her whole treasure is like it's so symbolic that her doofy ass brother who likes to spoon mummies tossed that shit in the pool, and she goes back to get it and they pull her back.
Yeah.
So they're essentially like forcing her into her narrative later on.
Yeah.
Right? They're forcing her to give up her life's conquest to just be their sidekick.
Yep. Exactly. And that's even evident at the end, too, when the whole destruction of Hymenoptera happens. Like, everything collapses. They're running from these falling pillars. Then they're just, like, leaving. And Brendan Fraser's sort of cadence and the way he's treating her is very much like, wow, you did it, kid, sort of a thing. And you're like, no, she was the leader. She saved you so many times. Like, even on the boat, when he's, like, loading his gun and not paying attention, the
And she
bullet
pulls
holes,
him?
and she pulls him away before you get shot. Like,
Yeah.
she literally has saved you so many times, and you have not saved her, and now you're belittling her and treating her like she's a sidekick.
You're
like
not giving
said.
her the satisfaction of saying like, hey, thanks for saving. He never once thanks her
Nope.
for any of that. He's just like, hey kid, you did it.
Yeah,
Whatever.
and you're just like that's so.
But like, this is what I want to talk about. Like, where it's like in the '90s we had this like girl power movement, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, and I really latched onto that. I love Spice Girls. I loved like like Josie and the Pussycats, all this shit that we got, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, I can do that. Yeah, I can fucking play an instrument. And lo and behold, here I am in a punk rock band now. but I loved these things that were telling me that I could be something, that I could do something. And what sucks is we had these. So I guess it's like, we have like stages to progression, right?
Yeah.
And to like, so this was like the moment where we were being told that we could do something, even though everybody else in the film or in this universe was telling you that you couldn't be that.
Yeah.
Right. So what I loved is Evelyn, she had these moments where like, everybody told her that she was shit, or, like that she wasn't capable, or that, like stay in the room because you can't do anything, that sort of thing. But like, she knows she's intelligent. She knows she's smart. She knows that she's important and that she needs to be there, right?
Yes.
And so when she comes up and when she, like, it's almost like, I mean, and I can really relate super hard to this, right? Where you're told that you're nothing a lot, and that seeps into your head, even though you know that you're not. Like, that just becomes, like, how you think about yourself.
Yeah.
And so when you do something smart, or when you do something that, like, solves everything or whatever, you are just so surprised and so excited at yourself, and you're so, like, so she had these moments where it was just like, oh, I did it, even though she knew she could do it, she surprised herself because she's been told over and over again. Yeah. So she's not just proving to other people that she can do it, she's proving to herself. So she's battling her inner monologue because, like, even if you know that you're something, like, you're better than what other people say you are, and this is why mental health is so important, and the people that you surround yourself with and everything, right? Like, the other people and how they view you and the things that they tell you really seeps into your head, and that becomes, that becomes your inner monologue, right? Yeah. And so when you see those moments, for me, like, as a kid, I was like, see, I knew she could do that. And now as an adult that's like kind of like dealing with those types of constraints, like trying to lift those chains and trying to come away from that, I'm like, this is what she's doing. Yeah. She's realizing, like, I can do this. So it's like, it's this breath of fresh air that keeps her going.
Yeah.
And it's so sad and it's so fucked up because she has always been capable.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's a moment specifically for her, and I love that they kept that in. But it sucks because it's also like, to the audience like, see, she's a girl and she could totally do it. See, like, oh my god.
Which is just so frustrating when everything else is so obvious. When you see these voices of doubt literally telling her she can't do it.
Who else is educated?
Nobody. Her. She's the only one who's actually...
They're all fucking, like, ragtag drunks or, like, in prison or whatever. And she's the only fucking educated person that is allowed to be in this story.
To be there. Everyone else is a treasure hunter or out for their own ego or just along for the ride because of tangential connection, right? Like, and that's... That, for me, is why when I say Rachel Weisz is the Mummy... Like, for my sort of nostalgic factor for this film, where I go back and I'm like, that film was sick. It's because of her existence in the film and her narrative within it, right? Where she, like you said, overcomes not only just that self-doubt that was given to her by men who didn't think she could do this thing, but at every pass is told, no. And she says, yes. And she does it. She does these things. She saved these people who don't even thank her. They don't give a shit. And at the end of the story... She accomplished so much and grew so much, and everyone else stays stagnant. They don't grow. They don't change.
But we feel like they do because of her.
Because of her.
She's carrying the weight of all of the characters at that point.
She's the center of the film.
Yes. Yeah. She really is.
And that's why the Mummy is Rachel Weisz.
It really is.
You know?
There's two things I want to talk about. First, we can talk about Imhotep, and then let's talk about how they treat people of color in this film. Can we?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So first, I want to say Imhotep is pretty much Voldemort.
Ooh, right? Yeah, let's talk about
it. So they both are called He Who Must Not Be Named, right? They're both bald with long, flowing, ominous, like, black robes, right?
Yeah.
So, like, and, like, so much of their cinematography is just, like, so similar. Like, they're shots. So, like, you know, like, nose up, just kind of looking down at everything and, you know. And also... They both love taking other people's souls.
Truly.
Like, so, I mean, like, really, like, the OG Voldemort is Imhotep, I believe.
Yeah. He did a millennia before Voldemort.
I know, like, maybe, like, Voldemort in, like, an alternate timeline was, like, really inspired by, like, Imhotep and all that stuff. Or, like, I picture Voldemort with, like, his, like, bedroom as a teenager and all of, like, you know, like, instead of, like, pop stars or like, you know, BTS or whatever. It's like posters of like Rasputin and like Imhotep.
I love and that. I want to see that room. That's so goofy.
Oh my god, I really do. But like, you know, just all these people like, oh man, these are my people. This is what I can do. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
Like super fanboy for all these bad boys.
Oh my gosh. Yes, exactly.
Was he like gay for them? Maybe?
Like, possibly. I mean, you're talking about Voldemort?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because, I mean, he was obviously gay. That's canon. That's queer canon for the Harry Potter universe.
Exactly.
Like, absolutely. So, I would say, yeah, a little bit, because he... I mean, we're just talking about Harry Potter now. So, Tom Riddle was, like, all misunderstood and, like, had to be in the closet and was just like, you don't get me, blah. And it was, like, this whole thing. So, possibly. To that sort of strength, right? Because in a place where he felt like he had no strength, white guy, he has all the strength, but whatever. To then grow up and be like, I was misunderstood and I'm also strong now. Let me show you how strong I am.
So you heard it here first. Voldemort was like a super
gay for Imhotep.
Yeah, totally gay for Imhotep.
Voldemort was gay for Imhotep. That is queer canon. That is...
That's where he pulled a lot of aesthetic and shit from.
Yeah, honestly,
like,
that's fact. Yeah, true. And honestly... The open shirt, like, just chest out all the time.
Oh, hell yeah.
Was super sick for me, like, a young gay, just like, what? But it was also, it just felt very gay. Like, his sort of existence, apart from, like, his longing love for Anaxamoon, he felt very just kind of like...
I feel like the way he carried himself even, and the way that he just, like, I don't know, like, his presence. Yeah. Like, I mean, like... Cool, like, Anaxamoon wasn't even, like, a real person, right?
No.
Like, because even in, like, the flashback, she was, like, an object of desire.
Yeah.
Right? They never, I'm not sure if they actually boned or anything, because it just showed the one time, because she had the body paint and it was smudged, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, maybe it was, she wasn't necessarily a person to him. He's loved her for so long in this sarcophagus for, like, millennia.
Yeah.
Or not millennia, whatever. You know what I mean?
Well, for a long time.
For a long fucking time. But, like, he's loved her so much loved, quote unquote, because that is, I have lots of feelings around that word and about how it's used. And when you quote unquote love something for so long it becomes like an obsession, right? And like in the way that he was denied this and this person for so long that became his identity, and now his obsession is her.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily so,
and it's no longer even emotional, it's just object possession. Like,
right.
He wants to own her, he wants her to be there, he wants to have her.
Which is, you know, if we're going back to like the original Mummy, right? That was it. That was the whole fucking thing. Yeah. So I feel like they did nail that. Yeah. You know, even if like it's just such subtext that like we're, you know, we can only talk about that in things like this, right? Or in conversation. But like, you know, but I feel like, yeah, that was absolutely a thing where Anaxamamoon wasn't necessarily his love or a person or anything. It was that she was now this object of, this is why I was put in this position, so this is now my existence, is I need to fulfill this. Yeah. You know?
And what's wild about that, too, is even in that opening scene, the flashback, what did she say? She says, my body is no longer his temple, referring to the pharaoh, because she was essentially his property, she was his lover. Mm-hmm. And then at that whole process, when he shows up and he's like, you're cheating on me or whatever, she's like, my body is no longer his property. Like,
fuck yeah!
It's no like my body is no longer his temple. And I was like, that's sick. But then she also just kind of like gave herself to Imhotep in a weird way, where she's like, I didn't like that it was sort of breaking the bounds of ownership into autonomy, and then to be like, oh, and then like, oh, Imhotep, I'm yours now. And then that's essentially like the whole process, and he's trying to get her back, and she's like, my love or whatever, and then that's that whole thing. And even, which we're not going to talk about, but the following film, when her character kind of gets more fleshed out.
I mean, we are going to talk about it.
I know. I guess we're going to talk about it right now. But her character gets a little bit more fleshed out. She's still sort of in that structure where, like, Rachel Weisz's character is a direct combat against her, because she's like, this is my person, this is my dude, like, fuck you. Yeah. You know, and they have that whole fight. That's super sick. But
oh, well, this is like a sequel.
The sequel. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that was a sequel for the Mummy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
For the 1999 Mummy.
Yeah, so the 2001
we have to
or 2. Yes, the 1999 Mummy. It was a sequel to that one with Rachel Weisz, and then the following sequels, which are not canon, do not count. That's the whole thing. But I just thought that was really interesting. And then the treatment of people of color or native people in this film
let's talk about this.
What a wild ride that is.
I mean, also in the last one it was really bad. But I want to get into it with this one again because it's what most people associate with the Mummy. Yeah. Lots of people haven't seen the 2017 one, thank God. Yeah. But like a lot of people also haven't seen the. Anyway, so this is the nostalgia one. This is the real one where we're like, oh fuck yeah, the Mummy, right?
Remember how cool that was? I love that film.
But like, really, the film starts off with French people and a American that's in charge of this French battalion, killing people of color that are there trying to stop them from unleashing this horror or like taking their fucking sacred land, because that is fucked up.
They're literally protecting Hamunaptra, and they're just like, we're gonna go in there, fuck you.
Or even just being like, oh yeah, like I know that this is your heritage, but this is mine now.
Yeah, we're taking this. It's just colonialism. That's literally what's happening.
That is so fucked up.
That's all it is.
Why are we championing this?
Yeah, and then our hero is on the side of the colonialist who's trying to take that land or trying to take their treasure, because for him, at this point, it is treasure, but then it becomes ego. And I mean, it's a little bit of both. It's a blending of the two, but that's the person we're supposed to champion. That's the hero of our story. It is fucked up. I know.
So, the parts, like, I had a lot of issues, but I will go with the thing that is like that sticks out more than anything to me. So the warden. Mm-hmm. Like, when white men and brown men are written exactly the same, but the reactions to them by the other characters are, like, differentiate, it tells us how we're supposed to react to people, like, saying these types of things, right? And that can completely change how you feel about a character.
Oh, truly, yeah.
For instance, so, like, to bring it back to something else, so, like, Parks and Rec, season 1, right? Leslie Knope was exactly the same as she's been written all throughout the series, but in season 1, everybody hated her and kind of treated her like a joke and just like, oh, that's great, and we're really, like, kind of patronizing. Yeah. And then they changed for season 2 throughout the rest of the seasons they didn't change Leslie Knope, they changed how everybody else like responded to her. Yeah. And then suddenly it was amazing, and Leslie was like this person that she became.
She was the leader. She was incredibly endearing to all the characters, but they also respected her with such like esteem. She was so strong and confident, whereas before, like you said, I noticed that too. That's so wild.
Yeah. So and there was like an interview I heard on like NPR about it. and
Oh,
stuff
okay,
like that
cool.
with the writers and stuff.
Okay.
But so like I feel like the same way in this, right? In terms of like the white guy is written to be like just kind of a asshole, kind of like abrasive, kind of like just like his own person, and kind of like witty and funny, right?
Yeah.
And the brown guy is also written like that too, like with those same things. I could see O'Connell saying the same things or doing the same things that the warden does.
No, I fully agree. They're essentially the same character. Like you said, they're written the same way, but our perception of them, we're essentially being told how to feel about them.
For instance, let's talk about the camel scene where they're all fucking riding camels, and then they're just like, oh, these creatures are so gross. I hate these creatures. They just spit and are like jerks and blah, blah, blah. And then it immediately cuts to the warden spitting and being just kind of like gross and obnoxious, like kind of trying to make a parallel between like these fucking animals and these human fucking animals, right? And I was so uncomfortable about that.
I didn't even notice that shit.
Oh,
That's
man,
so
it
gross.
was real fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, totally unsurprising, generally. I mean, from back then, it's not something I would have picked up. And even now, like, I guess I didn't pick it up. But, like, just from the context and narrative space of this movie, it doesn't... I'm not surprised. I mean, white people made this. The white person's the hero, even though they do the most fucked up shit. Like, they're the ones stealing stuff. They're the one making...
They're the whole reason that this movie happened.
Yeah, and... that's terrible. And it doesn't change the next one either. It's the exact same thing.
It really is.
It really is.
So, I guess with that, we will move to the 2017 version of The Mummy.
Boop, boop, boop. Yeah. So it's the same thing. We have a flashback at the beginning, right? It goes to 1127 AD England. They bury a knight, I guess, who has the stone.
It was weird that they decided to go with that first before, like, any of the...
Her story.
Like,
yeah, before they go into her whole backstory.
I mean, like, they center on the European people before they even center on the Egyptian people, which is crazy. Because it's just so wild because, like, the story is about these Egyptian people. And we never even talk about the fucking Crusaders, right?
Nope.
It's just like, cool, here's a stone, like... Wait, I thought I was watching The Mummy. I was legit confused.
Yeah.
I was like, am I watching the right fucking movie?
For a second, I literally thought it was going to be like a white mummy, and I was about to be like, I don't think we're going to talk about this. I'm done with this movie. I can't do this. But then they cut to the other thing, and they were like trying to say that, oh, you know, they found this tomb with like all this stuff, and it's ties to this because of that. And then I'm also sort of like, well, who are these people? And then we have Tom Cruise, and... So
immediately we're making it... We're making the very first statement about the story about white dudes.
Yeah, white dudes, exactly. White dudes,
and then
colonialists who killed native people in the sake of conquest, in the sake of ego and obtainability, of taking land, of taking things, of taking ownership, which is the history of white people in general, I think, white men in general. Ugh. Like, all they've done the entirety of their existence on this planet. So yeah, we've already centered it around them, and then we cut to a bit of the Egyptian history, it looks like. So it's a flashback to the pharaoh, who's supposed to be the new god of Egypt. Her father has a son, and she realizes that he's going to be the heir. So she makes a pact with evil incarnate, essentially, to gain the power of life, to exist forever, or to embrace evil, and then also just, like...
She gains the power of evil.
Gains the power of evil, yeah.
And so she, like, makes a pact with, like, a demon.
A demon, yeah.
Right, and she has to be naked to do it, because of course.
Obs.
Right?
True.
And
I mean, same. That's how... When I do it, that's how I do it. I'm fully nude. I do grow 2 extra pupils. It's hella cute. I've taken a couple selfies. It's very, very chill.
Oh, man. I'm excited for this.
It's a good time.
We'll post them later. But, like, so yeah, so she's there, and she's just like, cool, like, her, like, okay, so I want to understand her thought process. Oh, I guess, like, really just in all of the films, I don't understand people's thought processes, right? Yeah. So, like, in the original, it was like, I'm gonna condemn this dude to, like, a fate worse than death, but he's gonna live forever. Like, not thinking that anybody would ever dick him up. Like, that's fucking egocentric. Like, I mean, of course, like, we're all curious. Like, everybody's curious. Like, even if, like, it wasn't eventually the white man, maybe it would be, like, somebody eventually would be like, this is bullshit. Yeah. Like, you know, or be like, oh, oops. Like, his accidents happen, right? Like, you're trusting in humanity, and you should never do that.
Yeah, no.
But then, like, the second one, too, also, like, he's so pissed at this dude, and he just, like, straight up, like, gives him a face worse than death. But before that, he makes that bitch immortal, and then decides that, like, before they even, like, bury him, they know that if he gets this curse, he's going to have the power to destroy the fucking world. Why the fuck give him that power? Why not just, like, bury him alive and be fucking done with it?
Like, it probably won't happen.
Because that's all male jealousy that's happening, and so that's more patriarchy bullshit, right?
It's so wild. It is so wild.
So then this one, first of all, just, like, maybe don't give them powers, don't make them immortal, and just kill them, right? Or just bury them alive. Like, your point is, you got your point across, right? But then, like, so for this one, she makes this pact, and she does the thing, and then, like, so I thought that, like, this storyline, the way that they set it up, was better, like, or made more sense, right? Because the other ones, it was like, oh, well, you know, you're going to suffer and we're just going to, like, we're imprisoning you after we make you powerful, right?
Yep.
And this one was, she made herself powerful.
Yeah.
What drove her to this was patriarchy.
Yep.
Right?
It was nepotism within that, right?
Correct.
So, like, she had this power, she was given this, she was essentially saying, and even in the narration by Russell Crowe, okay, Russell Crowe's also in this, and he's the narrator at the beginning, which is a hard yikes.
Oh, boy.
And a hard, what? Excuse me? And his character is just...
I didn't even know he was there.
I didn't either. My notes, literally, I was like, Russell Crowe is in this? Hard yikes. And now he's narrating? Oh, no. That's what I wrote.
That's exactly what that says.
Yeah, that's what
so
my
great.
notes. It was so dumb. So, he's narrating, and in the narration, he's like, she's going to be held or heralded as a new god. As a god incarnate, right? Like, she is a god on earth. And that was sick. And then it's like nepotism stuff, and she's like, I gotta do this. And then, so she kills the baby brother and her dad. And now she's like...
Once she gains the power of this
evil
devil person, right? She could have just fucking killed him.
Yeah.
Like, she could have killed him and be done with it. But, like, her as a woman, she didn't have the strength to do this evil act, so she had to call upon, like, some other force to be able to help her with it because... Like, she's not strong enough just as she is as a woman to be able to commit this act. Mm-hmm. And then, it's real fucked up because... So, the villain of this story is essentially jealousy.
Yes.
Right? And then jealousy is, like, carries out its motives through sexual acts.
Oh, yeah.
Because the whole time, the woman... as she starts sucking people's souls, which all of the mummies in this do, instead of just showing, like, where, like, she pulls someone in and, like, kisses them and stuff like that, she is full on top of them. Fucking, it looks like softcore porn.
Yeah.
Like, the way that she is straddling these dudes. And it's always dudes, it's never women.
And did you also notice that she's doing the exact same thing that the other mummy did, the other Imhotep in the 1999 one? Mm-hmm. He was sucking the souls of dudes, too, but, like, their faces were far apart. He can suck... their souls out from, like, a good couple feet away from their face.
Oh, no, she had to, like, have tongue.
She literally had to be Frenching their full-on mouth to suck the soul out of them, which I was just like...
And, like, straddling them to do so. Because she would always, like, 90% of the time, she, like, threw them to the ground and then just, like, fucking straddled them. And it was like, And her fucking strategic, like, little, like, raps, how they would fall off. Or how, like, she had so many ass shots, too. It was wild. My
because
God.
I will say she also looked hella scary with, like, the 4 eyes and, like, everything. She looked awesome. Like, as a monster, she was sick. She was so cool. But it's wild, the little variations there. Because also, like, we've established that Imhotep is queer canon. Why can't we have him kiss another guy? Like, he's already gay. Voldemort, all that. It's all there. Make it queer. Make it... like, it could have been there, and they were just like, no.
Also,
like, okay,
why didn't she do that to the woman when she stole Blondie, right? I'm going to call her Blondie because, like, I never really got the character's names in this. So it's going to be Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise is just Tom Cruise in this movie. Yeah. And then Blondie. And then Mummy.
Oh, and then I do Nick Miller from New Girl. That's in my notes, his actual character name is Nick Miller from New Girl in any capacity. It's
Excellent.
Just because that's who he is. I mean,
it is.
And that's also just the character he's playing. He's just playing Nick Miller from New Girl.
I loved that she was in a prison. That made more sense to me. It was so cool that, like, but also, like, what is this saying? That the villain is the embodiment of jealousy that carries out her acts of, like, vengeance through sexuality. Yeah. So female sexuality is something to be feared, right? And female jealousy is something to be feared. Yeah. Because that's all we get from her. We just know that she's jealous and that she will, like, stick her tongue down your throat if you're a dude. Yeah. Because she should have done that to Blondie. Yeah. 100%. And I loved her as a villain. I really did, because
I thought she was great also.
Fucking badass. But like every time, like they just like they made her a sexual object.
Yes.
You know, it was just like, here's an ass shot, like out of focus, like whatever. I don't give a shit. Like, this is not the most interesting thing about her. What's interesting is when she imprints on Tom Cruise, right? And then she decides, you are the person that is going to be my person for this, right?
Yeah.
And she, like, the way that she mind controls him and manipulates him to, like, you know, he's driving the car and then all of a sudden he's back to her. Like, that shit was so
sick.
Fucking cool.
Well, because even before that, when it first starts happening and he just, like, wakes up in the middle of the street, right? Like, he has that vision of rats, and then she's in the alleyway and he gets, like, overcome by rats, and then Blondie pulls him off the street and he's like, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, he didn't know where he was. He lost, essentially, time, and it was a vision or a daydream. Almost.
Yeah.
Because she got in his head. That was cool. Like, all of that, like you said, so impressed. I was super
But then
into it.
is that, like, a comment on, like, female manipulation and shit like that, too?
Oh, to, like, the man, like, oh, she's tricking you or something. Or, like...
And, like, offering him, like, you'll live forever, you'll do all this other stuff, you know? Like, so I feel like, really, it just... I loved everything about her, but, like, I'm still kind of wrestling with the fact that, like, her whole thing, because she's first of all so much more complex than Emotep.
Yes, without a doubt.
Because Emotep's whole motivation was like, I want my woman back exactly how she was.
Yeah.
And her motivation is like, she's trying to fulfill her end of a bargain.
Yes.
And she's also like, and even above that, she was trying to get vengeance.
Yeah.
For her dad having a kid.
Yeah.
Which sucks, you know, but like, that's patriarchy. She was a victim of patriarchy.
Truly.
Because this kid was just born and then all of a sudden, like, everything that you've worked for your whole life doesn't matter because a dude was born.
Yeah. And that's why I kind of also liked her more as a character, because it felt, yes, the negatives of the character of the villain herself was, like, jealousy focused, sexual focused, but the motives from the beginning was just a response to nepotistic patriarchy.
And it was relatable.
Yeah. 100%, where she's like, she is powerful and she's doing this. And her dad's like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, I'm the new queen. I'm a god. Let's go. And then this baby's born and it's like, nope, they're the god. You're out. Bye. Like, yep.
But then she's also doing it through masculinity. So, because she has to call upon this demon. And then she has to set him free with another man.
Yes.
So, like, even she can't even get her vengeance herself. She has to get it through a man.
Yeah. True. Yeah. You know? And that's it's frustrating. So there's to me there are positive and negative aspects to this dynamic character. Yeah. Because she to me was the most interesting part of this movie. Tom Cruise.
Fuck yeah, she was.
The most boring white guy. Nick Miller from New Girl. Super cute, but also was a zombie and like also was fake and also a part of Tom Cruise's mind and was also like, why are you here? Can
we talk about how like he called in on airstrike on like a fucking city that he didn't even know was like evacuated by civilians, and it was just like, I must save my skin, fuck off. So, after fucking Tom Cruise like cuts his water skin, so he's like, hey, you're gonna go with me.
Adventure, it's so fun, right? Bro.
That is like life and death.
Yeah, and that's the start of the movie. That's like the beginning after this first flashback.
U.S. soldiers.
And they're U.S. soldiers. They're talking about going down there to steal treasure, which is also its own little thing. And then they're like, well, we have to, because I guess the justification was there were quote unquote terrorists destroying part of the land and part of the history there. And so remember those guys who were with the guns, like just shooting the statues and stuff?
They were just terrorists there.
They were just terrorists.
But, or the insurgents, as they call them.
The insurgents, yeah. But it was just another way to say terrorism. But like that was self-justified based on Tom Cruise and Nick Miller from New Girl. But it wasn't like verified by any means. So they go into this town. They don't know civilians have been evacuated. And now it's just a gunfight. They're on the roof and they're like trapped and they're stuck. And because they're trapped and stuck, because they inserted themselves into the situation, they call an airstrike on this village, at which point they don't know if civilians have been evacuated or not. They just blow the shit up. And they know they're in trouble. And it's either they blow the shit up and possibly kill a bunch of people who they don't care about and they don't know.
And you're not supposed to care about.
And you're not supposed to. Exactly. Or they die.
But then, like, so for people that are consuming this like us, we're like, what about the people? Because you see, like, a bicycle. You see, like, pots and pans here. It does not look abandoned by any means.
People have been living there as of that morning.
Yes. And then, like, all of a sudden, like, what the fuck are you doing? Right? Yeah. And then, like, there's the throwaway line, which pissed me off so fucking bad. And it was just like, oh, the civilians had already evacuated. And it just sucked because it was like they didn't know, like they acknowledged that they didn't know that the civilians had evacuated, and they were, because, so the reason that these two guys are there and the, like, you know, our introduction to them is they are two long-range scouts for the U.S. military in Iraq. And they are supposed to be going and gathering intel on the insurgents and where they are, you know, so they can do war and do all that shit, right? And I know how I sounded doing
No,
that,
I love that. No,
it sucks.
So they can do war. Yeah, yeah.
So they can do war.
They can do war,
right?
yeah.
But like, Tom Cruise is like this person that is a treasure hunter, right? So he abuses his position to go and fulfill his own selfish needs. And it's said, like, even the sergeant knows that he is doing this and plundering these, like, sacred site, like, historical sites, and selling these items on the black market, which, first of all, is fucked up.
Yeah.
Right? Just for anybody to be doing that, especially in present day, knowing what's going on, and he doesn't give a shit about that. Yeah. Second of all, he's doing this as a representative of the U.S. military. So he is blatantly not following orders and super far off from where he's supposed to be because he just wants to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
This is something, like, my husband was in the Navy, right? And so he knows how, like, he was watching this with me, he was like, that is a fucking crime. Like, they would be court-martialed, they would be the fuck out of there, especially if their sergeant knows or anything. But instead, because it's a white dude, they are turning a blind eye to this.
Well, also, it's just like, yeah, is he going to get in trouble?
And
absolutely
and
not.
Why not? Because, like, they would absolutely be in trouble. So this is, like, setting a problematic, like, I mean, not that I'm pro-military or anything, right? But this is setting them up for, like, you'll all look like idiots, and you're all being, like, ugh.
Well, it is just such a weird way to go about, like, this modern retelling of a story, right? Like, we're doing a remake, and it's a modern retelling of it. So it's weird to justify being in this place. So, like, they're also there, and they discover this tomb after the airstrike. And the reason for the sarcophagus being there, it's essentially, like, a prison, which we'll get into in a second. But it's 1,000 miles away from Egypt, right? That's what they've expressed to us.
Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia.
Ancient Mesopotamia, yes. And so the justification for that is they had to do it in the Middle East because they had to get this quote-unquote monster away from there and bury her somewhere else.
Which
right?
I felt made sense.
It did, 100%. But how do we tie the Middle East to Egypt? War.
Well, also, here's...
current war. Like, it's just... And that to me felt really weird and wacky. And I was like, that was so... at least in my opinion, so unnecessary.
Well, think about it. The first Mummy didn't have any of this, right?
No.
Because we weren't at war in Afghanistan and everything yet, right? But now or like the Middle East in general. And in 1999 and in 2017, who is the bad guys according to the majority of, like, we need to go in there and we need to fix Iraq. We need to go, like, that's all fucked up and that's all bullshit. So this is just feeding those types of egos.
It's feeding that beast. It's feeding that fear of brown people, that fear of non-Western culture. It's literally...
From the 1920s, right? The 1920s-ish, when the 1999 Mummy takes place, to, like, 2017, right? To where this version takes place. They both start off with white dudes in a place that doesn't belong to them, killing brown people for the sake of treasure. Yeah. And that is fucked up.
That's super fucked up. So that's the Mummy.
So this is the Mummy. But, like, so then, like, let's talk into why they're there. So the reason that they are there is because Tom Cruise... slept with a woman who ended up being, like, she had, like, this note that had said, like, you know, go check out these coordinates, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, I'm gonna find this before her, right?
Yeah, he stole it from her.
He stole it from her after seducing her and after sleeping with her, right? And then he goes in and she's like, what the fuck? Yeah. And she's like, this is he stole her life's work. Yeah. Like, he literally just in one night, because he's a white dude and doesn't care about anything that she was doing or what she had going on, just takes what she has and said, this is mine now. Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry,
fuck
bye.
off.
And then she spends the whole movie trying to win his affection.
Well, the first part, she doesn't, right?
No, but she's turned off by him. But even after that, like, he's expressing to her, I don't care about you and you don't matter to me because you don't exist, essentially, she's still kind of pining for his affection, which is just such a weird way to write that character, because Tom Cruise sucks. Like, his character's shitty.
I wouldn't be in love with him.
No. And it's just weird that this person who is, like, so knowledgeable, she's worked so hard to get where she's at, is now falling for this asshole who stole from her, manipulated her, and treated
Yeah.
her like nobody.
Well, and let's back up a bit
I
and
know,
talk
I'm
about
going
why
super ahead.
it's so jarring that she became that person, because she didn't start off like that, right?
No.
So she, like, you know, they call in the airstrike on this place, and then boom, oh look, there's like some Egypt stuff here. That's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she comes in. I don't know how she found out about all this, right? Because it was just within a matter of a couple of like an hour or so.
An hour maybe she gets
I would
there.
say.
Yeah.
So she gets there and she's like, you stole my life's work, blah, blah, blah. And then Tom Cruise looks at his sergeant and is like, I don't know who this bitch is. And she's like, look, we slept together last night. It's like, it was a one night stand, whatever. He didn't really last that long. And then he's like, And then he's like,
oof.
well, I don't know. Like, he just starts backpedaling.
Yeah.
The whole time, because he's just so, like, he's like, well, you know how women are. Like, so his story changes from, like, oh, well, I've never seen her, to, like, well, you know how women are. She's lying, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he starts to try to, like, he turns it on her from the get-go, and then he just keeps turning it even more to try to make it, like, he just, like, makes himself even more of an asshole, if that's possible. And she's like, yeah, we boned, whatever, it's fine. And
she's over it, and she's like, yeah, you weren't great, and that's the end of the story. And his justification for possibly gaslighting and totally manipulating this person's story, or abusing his power in the way that he is by spinning the story back on her, started off because she essentially said he had a small dick or was bad at sex. And it's just so telling of the straight white men in general at large, and that's the character, that's the hero of our story. That's who we're talking about.
And he calls her a liar because
Yeah.
of that. Like, he's like, oh, she's lying. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, and it's like, and she's just like, yeah, whatever, fuck off.
Yeah.
Right? So she starts off super strong.
Ugh. Yeah.
And then she gets into, like, okay, let's go down into the...
They're down in the thing. Tom Cruise is trying to steal gold, and so is Nick Miller from New Girl. And Blondie's like, hey, what are you doing? We're here. Stop. And they're like, okay, I wasn't doing anything, but fine. Whatever. And it's just like goofy antics. They have to go for some reason. Somebody's coming, and they can't, like, take anything, so they have to leave. And so Tom Cruise quickly just shoots the chain that's holding the sarcophagus down. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, no. And then it, like, pulls her up, and they're like, look at this cool thing we just found. Pulls her out of the mercury pool. And then they decide to, like, excavate the sarcophagus and, like, take it to England. And in that process, a bunch of crows show up, and it's like, that was a really cool scene where they're pulling her out of the ground, and there's a bunch of crows just, like, cawing. And as a tie back, when she's, like, becoming the incarnate of evil, there's those crows hanging from the ceiling who are, like, dead. But as evil's taking over her body, they're, like, awake and, like, caw, 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 like, freaking out. And I was like, that was
really tight.
Cool. Yeah, it looked cool. It felt cool. It was just, like, the coolest thing. And so that's, like, sort of a replay from when that was happening, when they were excavating the sarcophagus. And then they get in the plane. Nick Miller from New Girl got bit by a bug that came out of the tomb.
A spider. I'm sorry, spider. If I were in that room when all those spiders came out, I would have dove in the pool of mercury, and I would rather die by mercury poisoning by a fucking by them being consumed by spiders like that. Fuck that.
Yeah, no, they were huge. They were huge bugs. So he's, like, getting obviously sick. Like, he's not doing great. They have the sarcophagus on board. Tom Cruise is, like, still trying to sleep with this girl, but also is, like, disinterested, and also, like, why did you belittle me, and why did you talk about my small dick in front of the sergeant? It's your personality at this point. That's what we've deduced from this whole interaction, because you're obsessed with it. And they're flying, and this huge murder of crows is just like a cloud shows up, and they're like, oh no. And so they fly right into it. All the crows fly in, kill the pilots and everything. Now the plane's going down. This was my favorite scene in the movie, because as the plane's going down, they're, like, rolling around this, like, Inception sort of thing, but they're also, like, actually flying. So they, like, shot it in a real plane. So sick.
It took them 2 days to shoot the scene.
Oh my god,
and
it was so cool.
It was, like, and it was an actual falling plane that they were in to shoot this. Which I didn't realize, and I was like, holy shit, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, it's kind of a little boring, because they, like, just roll around a couple times, and I'm like, all right, I get it. Like, you know, but, like, I mean, it's, when you think about it being a real falling plane, it's like, wow, that's pretty tight. And also, I would be scared shitless. I would not do this.
Yeah,
you
isn't
know?
that crazy?
But yeah, so what I do love is that, like, the majority, because this is all the first 10 minutes, people.
Yeah.
Like, so when they go to England, that's where the story really begins. And that's like, so the majority of the destruction takes place in England on white people's land, which I'm all about. Rather than, like, because they're the ones that deserve that rather than the fucking, you know, the native, like, Iraqi or Egyptian people or, like, whatever place that they're in, because like the white man stole this, so they're now able to, like, so they're going to reap the destruction rather than just forcing it on the people that tried to keep them from that. So I thought that was fucking bananas and amazing.
Also, too, the fact that she's the one who brought down the plane, the mummy. Yeah. Because she's the one who brought the crows, and she's the one who knocked the plane down at that church at the very specific place. Bitch. And I was like, ooh, yeah, she knows what's up. So that was sick. But the plane's flying down, and like he pushed Blondie out with the parachute. He pulled the ripcord, and then it pulled her out.
Yeah, because he put the parachute on her, right? Yeah, and I hated that because I was like, this guy has been nothing but a fucking asshole, right? And he is such a dick, and all he cares about is his dick. And then, like, you know, he puts the parachute on her and is like, great, this is going to be the one thing, his one redeeming move. Because I'm a person that believes that one good act does not erase a lifetime worth of shittiness. Oh, truly, yeah. And so I was like, oh, great, this is all we know about him now, you know, and now he's going to be fine. Yeah. So I rolled so hard at that point, right? And so, like, he pulls the ripcord for her, and it comes out later that he didn't, like, she's like, I'm gonna save you, because that's the act that changes her motive to him, and she's like, you're a good person, you saved my life. So she, like, kind of commits her life to this person at this point, and he's like, later comes out, he's like, oh, well, I didn't know there wasn't another parachute. Yeah. So he I liked that he at least admitted that he didn't know that he was sacrificing himself. Yeah. So I liked that a lot.
Same. It played back to his shitty character.
But that also didn't matter in the end, you know? And I feel like it should have. I feel like, because she was just like, oh, well, I mean, it's okay. Because, like, there's that weird, like, awkward, like, oh, well, okay. Yeah. So, sure. Like, sure. All right. But, like, even, like, the nice, good things that he does out of his heart are not actively because he's a good person. It is because he thinks that he's still going to be able to find a way out. Yes. You know, so it's not like, I'm sacrificing myself for you. It is like, all right, you're good. I'm going to take care of myself now.
Yeah. I'm going to figure this out. Yes. I'll be fine. You'll be fine. Whatever. Go. Please leave. Yeah. Yeah. And then the plane crashes and then all hell breaks loose. It's sick.
But, like, so from that moment, essentially what happens is, like, the mummy is now free, and the movie at this point can't decide if it's a horror movie or if it's an action movie. Yeah. And it doesn't do the thing of, like, being a horror action movie well. No. You know, because it's, like, it has these moments where it's, like, kind of scary, and then it's just, like, action-y, like, I
Then it's, like, car rolling, falling out of the car, like... All like action adventure, a zombie's like reaching in and he's like punching the zombie out of the car windshield, and like they're avoiding all this stuff, and like rips off his arm. It's like, ooh, wacky prop throw, like it's trying to be,
but it's not even campy.
No. At least the 1999 version
is campy.
Is campy because they know, like, it felt very knowledgeable about what it was trying to do, whereas this one's trying to be Mission Impossible, but with zombies, and it's just a little like, what? Why are you choosing to make this that was confusing.
Because it's Tom Cruise. Also, can I say, so there's Tom Cruise apparently had so much control over this whole film and so much input in, like, the editing and the marketing and all this other stuff that it changed the pace and the style of the film, supposedly, or from what I'm reading on my sources online. And also, it went through 2 directors before falling on Alan Kurtzman, who worked on things like Hercules, Xena, like Alias. He created Fringe and shit like that. So we know that he, like, you know, he's in this, he knows what the fuck he's doing. Because Xena, holy shit, Xena. Wild. Right, like, talk about, like, what I hold on to as a kid, fucking Xena and Gabrielle. Yeah. Babe. Gorge. So, so it went through 3 directors, so that's never a good sign. No. Right?
And you can almost guarantee that that's the case. Right? With somebody like Tom Cruise, like, it's very evident that he had a lot of say-so in how his character was portrayed and wanted to make sure that, like...
It was Tom Cruise.
It was still Tom Cruise. Like, he was the virile stud of the show. Like, he had to be naked, he had to, like... not care about the girl, but
he
also
had to be like super
loved.
young,
And he had
right?
to be, he had to
When
be
he's
20 years
talking-
old.
Okay, so there's a line where Russell Crowe says to Tom Cruise, who Tom Cruise is 2 years Russell Crowe senior, something about like, you know, oh, you young dudes. What was it? What was that line? It was something calling Tom Cruise like way younger and stuff like that. So not only is Tom Cruise trying to talk about how his dick in this film, but also how young he is.
Yeah.
When like this dude is like 2 years his senior.
Yeah, it's
like, I'm sorry, I know he wants to be like 20. He wants to stay that person he was in Top Gun.
Yes.
But he's fucking, what is he
He's
like?
fully 87. Like,
yeah.
Truly, he is 87 years old.
Yeah, he really is.
And it's just so evident that like he had a lot of pull over how his character was portrayed, and that's probably why they went through so many directors. Again, speculation, but it seems pretty evident. It seems pretty clear that that's the case. And this movie really suffered for it. I feel like the movie could have been way better without Tom Cruise.
So, but yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. Is there a lot more to talk about this? Because I feel like the most, I feel like there is more to talk about. But the most compelling things I feel were the mummy themselves.
Yeah.
About, like, you know, in this. I guess we should talk about, like, it was supposed to be the first installment in the, what is it? The Dark Universe franchise, yeah. Right? Which immediately was indefinitely postponed after this film because it did so horribly in theaters. And I think it did so horribly because they didn't really give it a chance.
Yeah.
Right? Because this felt like, and we talked about it, like, this felt like an Avengers film. Like, they were trying to make this the Avengers of, like, monster films, yeah. Right? Because Universal has always had, like, the Mummy, Dracula, Invisible Man, Swamp Thing, all of that, yeah. Right? Like, back in the day. And so now they're trying to be like, oh, well, everybody wants all this big giant thing, you know? Like, so now, like, yeah, let's put Mr. Hyde in there. Let's do this. And, yeah. Like, and even the soundtrack was, like, it felt very superhero.
Yes.
When I feel like it should, if they had leaned into the macabre a bit more.
Yes.
Right? You know, like, that, like, you know, just a little bit eerie.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, like, you know, a little bit how these monster films are supposed to be. Like, they're, yeah. Like, rather than explaining everything and rather than, you know, like, letting it be so black and white, like, you know, just leaning into the darkness a little
yeah.
bit. You know, but it doesn't allow you that because even at the end, like, the mummy's powers are essentially, like, she's killed. And Tom Cruise gets these powers somehow, and now he's like a super white guy that goes back to fucking Iraq or wherever.
He goes to Egypt because Giza's in the back.
God!
in the background that they're riding off to, and Nick Miller, who's like still a zombie and dead and now alive or something.
Didn't even realize he was back alive. Because I thought he had died.
Yeah,
like, and he was just like a figment of the imagination. Whatever.
It was very confusing, and also just the fact that Tom Cruise, his justification for like becoming the embodiment of evil is Blondie dies, and he's like so overtaken by her death, which is like doesn't make sense because he didn't even like her. He has the knife with like the jewel or the amulet or something that like possesses the power. If he destroys it, I guess he becomes the thing he most despised, which is the monster.
I think like, the thing is, like, now he's cursed.
Now he's
supposedly
cursed.
He's cursed.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's cursed with like invincibility and shit like that, and he has all of these things. Oh no.
Rats.
But like, I think but now he's essentially the superhero with the mummy's powers. Yep. So again, she lost all of her power to a man.
Yep.
You know,
a white man.
Now this time to a white man.
And now he possesses all of the power of the ancient Egyptian people and the incarnate of evil from their culture. Ugh. So if we're gonna just like go ahead and have a fun time with this, let's liken this to The Last Samurai.
Oh my god.
Where Tom Cruise does oh my god. It's too much and Tom Cruise needs to stop. And I think this is just a call out post for Tom Cruise. Like, we need to stop him. We need to make his career end. We need him to stop making films.
Just be a Scientologist.
Yeah.
It's okay just to do that.
Just go stay in the temple. Go speak at your events. Like, it's chill. We don't need to see you in popular media and popular culture anymore. We don't need that. We do not need you anymore. But that's, I think, that's the end of the movie. Do you think that the 1999 version that you grew up with held up to the standards that you had set forward in your own head?
I feel like in some ways it did.
Yeah.
in the sense that, like, representation matters.
Yes,
right?
truly.
I always hold on to the female characters so much more than I hold on to the male characters.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't have a great background myself, right? And so, like, the people in films and TV and things like that, I felt like were kind of like showing me what's okay, what's not okay, how I can, like, break the mold and things like that, right? Yeah. And so when it comes to things like, you know, empowerment and things like that, that's what I looked to.
Yeah.
Was like, and in the 90s, you know, there was that really patronizing 1990s, like, girl power bullshit.
Yeah.
But for me, it's amazing how far we've come. Like, people always say that we haven't come far enough, right? Which we haven't, for sure. Like, but we're getting better than we were in the 1990s, because now we can look at these films and be like, holy shit, Home Improvement was very, very problematic, right? Married with Children, holy shit. Like, and we can like these things. Like, we can like these things as, like, you know, they're time capsule and things like that, but recognizing that they weren't progressive, that they were actually regressive, things like that, right?
Totally.
So, for me, 1990s Mummy held up in the fact that I can relate so much to Rachel Weisz, right? Because I feel like her struggle, as much as we want to say that we're not still there, as women in these spaces of knowledge and things like that, we very much are, you know, and it's getting better, but it's not. People want to pretend like sometimes, like, it's, oh yeah, everything's fixed, but it's really not.
No,
you know,
I mean, we still exist in a patriarchy like that.
We do, and that's why, like, pay disparity and all this other stuff, all of these issues that, you know, we're still living through it, and we're still figuring out how to fix this.
Yes.
You know, so I feel like her specific character, like you said, the Mummy doesn't exist without her.
Yes.
And
that film would not exist without Rachel Weisz.
Her drunk rant when she is just talking to, like, O'Connell, like, completely uninhibited, and she's so confident, and she's like, that was everything.
It was gorgeous. She's so good.
Everything.
Honest, yeah, yep.
And I can still really relate, and in a lot of ways I feel like we're still, a lot of us maybe still feel like that.
Yes.
You know, and like her, you know, if you don't, that's great. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
But things are changing. They're getting better, but to me, like, it's important to go back to this and be like, everything else was a little bit worse than I remember it, but her character, I feel like, really holds up.
True. Absolutely. And I feel the same way. I think generally it's tricky because, like you said, at that time, a lot of stuff wasn't really at the forefront of thought as far as, like, socio-equity or cultural equity in any capacity. Like, it still was very much just like us versus them, and white people rule. Like, white people rule. Like, it was so goofy, and it really shines through in this movie at how much that was evident and how clear it was in telling this story. But Rachel Weisz's character was fantastic. She was the film for me.
And in the new Mummy, like, the Mummy was the character for me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, and she was the one, like, I kind of wanted to see her succeed.
I did too.
You know, and I'm so sad that at the end, again, the dude took the knowledge and the motivation from the woman and took that as his own.
Yeah.
And so now the woman means nothing because the dude now has this.
Yes.
You know, so I, like, in both films, I don't feel like the women got justice.
No.
You know, even if she's a bad guy, whatever. Like, she was a great bad guy because she was complicated.
She was sick,
you know? And she was just overly sexualized, you know, in a way that she didn't need to be.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, like, they both didn't get their justice. And I feel like the women really are what made this thing shine.
Yep.
And did we need this? Did we need this new adaptation?
No, absolutely not.
I don't think we did.
I don't think we needed it. I do like that it was essentially a vessel for... What is that actor's name who played the Mummy in the newest one? Sofia Boutella. She is sick. She was fantastic in this movie. She was the highlight of it. We did not need this film, though. I don't think we need to recreate it. The only reason it was recreated was to be a part of this new, like, dark universe thing. They're trying to set this whole stage for all these remakes of classic monster movies. It was not necessary. Did I enjoy it? Yes. Was it fun and wacky? Yes. Was the story bad? Absolutely it was. But she was great. Tom Cruise is trash. Nick Miller is fine. And that's it.
Yeah, and I feel like even like so if we're going based on remakes, I feel like the 1999 one was a good one.
It was, yeah.
You know?
Of the three, it's my favorite.
Yeah, I agree. I liked the 1932 one because women saved women.
Yes.
You know, because they never allowed the men to save them.
Yeah.
You know, and so I loved that. And I loved, you know, that the women's knowledge in the 1999 version, like that's, you know, that kind of progressed the whole thing,
yes.
right? But like in each story, the woman is the co-star.
Yeah.
She's never the star. Mm-hmm. You know, and like they're never like, and I know that we didn't get into like, you know, things like Dr. Jekyll or things like that, and like, you know, I'm sorry, but this was not his film.
It's not even necessary. We don't need to care about Russell Crowe. We don't need to care about them setting the stage for this universe.
Yeah, I mean, well, maybe if they continue making their stuff, which I hear that they're going to continue making that stuff. Like, we'll talk about this then and there, but right now, like, what I want to focus on is the Mummy, right? Yeah. And so in each one, it felt like, you know, reincarnation was a big thing. Right? Their motivation in the first two was love, and the second one was jealousy. Yeah. Right? And that's when they gender bent it. Because it can't be love for the woman. It has to be jealousy for it to be menacing.
Truly. And even in the titular role, she's not even the main character. The main character is Tom Cruise.
But she was the most compelling.
But that's just playing back onto the idea that, like, the stories are going to be just about the men, like you said. It's now about jealousy. It's not about love, because women can't have that power, right? And even when she is the mummy in The Mummy, Tom Cruise is still the star. For whatever reason, he is the hero.
The name of the film, the film is named after her.
Yes, but she's not the star.
But she's not allowed to.
She's not allowed to be. No, because she's she.
Yes.
Wild. Fuck that shit. That's so gross.
But, like, so, and each time the men save the women based on things that, like, things and tools, or like, even the whole story gets set into motion and gets rectified by the women, through the woman's knowledge. Yeah. Or through the woman's resources, right? Through, like, the Jekyll University or whatever the fuck that was. Like, but...
The Jackal Palace. Jekyll Palace.
I would love to see more of the Dark Universe.
Same.
But, like, only because I secretly want to talk about it on this.
Same. I just want to see what they would do. I don't expect any of them to be actually good, but I wanted to see the visuals. Especially, and I know we're going to wrap up here in a sec, but Johnny Depp is apparently cast as the Invisible Man. And I don't give a shit. Stop casting him and stuff. Stop giving him clearance or credence or leeway. He sucks. Stop fucking casting him and stuff. And especially this director who's just like, I want the best of the best. It's like... He's a fine actor. Whatever. Who cares? It doesn't matter. He sucks. Stop giving him stuff.
In the same way that we keep... So, a big part of this podcast and why we're starting it is to highlight the fact that we're only retelling the same stories, right? Yeah. And so that's why we're comparing and contrasting them and trying to do deep dives into all of them, right? Or in all of the iterations of them. But the main problem right now is that rather than allowing new stories to be told, rather than allowing new directors or new writers or new actors or anything to be in these starring roles or in these major roles, we are allowing the same fucking people and the same stories to be told.
And it's like white-centric stories, too. It's just stories where the white people are the heroes.
White-straight-centric.
White-straight-centric, thank you, yeah. Where it just, it doesn't have to be, and we can change. And we're starting to see some of that change, but... why not fully go for it and say, yeah, let's tell the story we haven't heard before. Let's tell the story from this culture made by the people of that culture, giving them the platform to be creative, to create something new and unique. Not even new and unique, rather new to a Western audience and new to white audiences, and not take a story from them and tell it with a white lens. Like,
without pandering.
Without pandering,
right?
yeah.
Because, like, that's what we had in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
It was girl power, cool, like, oh, girls fight, blah, blah, blah. But it's okay, they're friends in the end, blah, blah, blah. Or without being like, look, isn't it cool that this person's gay?
Yeah,
like,
right?
Which is,
God.
like, it's so fucked up because then, like, their whole character becomes, like, gay, rather than that just being, like, a footnote, right? You know, like, that is their character.
It's not a unique... Or a fully realized character. They just become a trope at that point. They become a just an object, a prop almost. It's like, oh well, we also have the black person and the gay person and the woman and this, and it's like these are all just essential props in a white man's story, and we need to stop telling that white man's story. So We talked about a lot.
A lot.
A lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
In conclusion, the Boris Karloff 1932 version, who is this for? And did we like it?
I think it was just for general audiences because they didn't want to lean too far into the taboo with the things that they cut from it. I think it was just to scare people because they weren't used to being scared in this way.
Yeah. Did you like it?
I loved it.
Cool.
Did you like it?
I did. I did like it. I thought it was very fun as a scary movie. I was like, that's cool. I loved the makeup. It wasn't very scary, but the makeup was super sick. And I think it was, in my opinion, for general audiences the same. But at that time, I do think general audiences generally meant men. So
yeah, that's true.
that was my take.
Mm-hmm.
1999. Was it progressive, regressive? Did it say anything new or interesting, or was it the same?
I think it was a little regressive because in the first one, she was so independent, and this one she had to rely on dudes for literally everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was regressive, and I don't think that it was interesting because it felt like Indiana Jones, you know?
Yeah, but with
the
mummies.
woman was smart.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you?
I feel the same way. I think it was regressive for the very same reasons. From looking back on it, I thought that this movie was way less problematic than it was, but that's just because I've grown and I've learned so much since it's come out. We all have, right? So going back, it felt weird going back and seeing certain things that we discussed, but yes, I do think it was regressive. Who was it for?
It was for anybody that loved Indiana Jones. It was just like, again, I feel like it was for general audiences. There wasn't really like, they were also being a little bit pandering. Like it was just kind of like for everyone.
Yeah.
There wasn't a specific market, I don't think.
I think it was specifically written just for Harrison Ford. Only him. They made this movie for him, and that's it.
And then he said no.
And then he said, no thanks.
And they're like,
I've already done
we'll
this.
get
And
George
they're
of the
like,
Jungle.
all right, sure. Yeah. Exactly. Did we like it? Did we like it? Did you like it?
Of course, I loved it.
Yeah, same.
I like, it had its moments where it was not great, but I still really love this film, and I will watch the shit out of it if it's ever on TV.
Me too. I loved it. I like, even with all of its shit, I think it's a wonderful film. I think it's so fun. It is a wacky adventure film, and I liked it. I liked it, and I like it. I like both of them. Yeah.
Okay, so what about the 2017 one? So compared to its predecessors, was it new or interesting?
Because of the gender reversal of the mummy, I think that was new and interesting. But as a whole film, I do not think it was new or interesting, and I thought it was regressive in the same ways that the Brendan Fraser one was, because of its treatment of Native people and women at large. But the idea of making the main villain, who are predominantly men, a woman, and then having that sort of transposition within its narrative, that was sick. I thought that was cool.
I totally agree with that. I don't think I could have said that any better. Like the most interesting part about this was the mummy herself. Yeah. And truly. How they rewrote that character, but nothing else was new. Yeah. It was all just kind of shitty and the same.
Yeah. 100%.
Who was it for? Who is this one for?
It's for Tom Cruise. That's it. No, well, actually, no. I'm gonna stand by this. It was only for Tom Cruise because of all the directorial disputes that he'd had. All of like how he just like jumped in and kind of made this his movie. He made this movie for him. That's it. End of story. Nobody else mattered in this film. Obviously, as we saw through the narrative, nothing was important apart from Tom Cruise making sure that people know he's only 24.
And he has a big dick.
And he has a big dick. And he gets me. Yeah. So the movie is for Tom Cruise and Tom Cruise alone.
I agree because nobody else fucking saw it.
Yeah, nobody else saw it.
Oh man. For Tom Cruise.
For Tom Cruise.
For Tom Cruise.
Did we like it?
I enjoyed it. I didn't like it, but I enjoyed it because of the mummy. I could give a shit less about anything else about this film. Yeah. It was messy, but I just wanted to see more of the mummy.
Agreed. So I'm in the exact same boat. However, I will also include Nick Miller from New Girl because of, and I will say this fully and clearly, my crush on him and the charmingness I find when I watch him act. because he's just doing the same character. But Nick Miller for New Girl and the Mummy herself were the reasons I enjoyed this movie. I did not like this movie.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So thank you so much for listening. This has been NOTstalgia. If you'd like, you could write into us at notstalgiapodcast@gmail.com. We'd like to thank David Tercero for providing technical support.
And Danny Barkley for both editing and producing this podcast.
See you later.
I guess so, yeah. Thank you for listening to episode 1. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Eric.
Bye-bye.
Bye.